Well, this is probably going to be the last time this trailer is going to be like this, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we've been in this trailer for
3 years?
3 years?
4 years.
Going on 4 years. And it's been great, but what we've learned is that we need to make things more livable. So we're going to give you an in-depth tour of what an Intech looks like, or a lot of RVs would look like after this much use, especially full-time use. Even with the mods we have, we're still struggling with moisture and insulation and stuff like that. So we've ran into a lot of mold and things that we just don't want to deal with health-wise. So we're going to take a couple weeks break of living in the trailer and do our first full revamp of the inside, which we've never done. We've always just, we've added and had like this massive time crunch.
Still a massive time crunch.
Yeah, we only have 2 weeks to do this,
You
but
seem to really like doing that.
yeah, but normally it's like we have to sleep in it that evening, so we have no option. So what we're gonna do today is gut the inside. We'll give you kind of a view of what it looks like as it currently sits, the good, bad, and really, really bad. There's a lot of rust in here. There's a lot of mold.
And it's a mess because we just got back.
Yeah,
from
we
the trip.
just took an amazing trip. So I'm stoked that we got one last good use out of it before we actually tear in and do a real revamp and make it more like a tiny home. Which this could be essentially be done with the cargo trailer. But yeah, let's get started.
This is all mold on the carpet. And we wipe it down every day and it just comes back. This is mold staining. This has been wiped and it's perma mold. It gets so moist in here that the wood stove starts to rust on top if we don't run it. So if we're not running it and we're running like an electric heater, this happens. So obviously anything that's not stainless hardware, very rusty. Every screw that connects to the aluminum frame will collect condensation and it will just drip water. So we have this film that's on the ceiling that's peeling in a lot of spots. Here's one that's really, really bad. Oops, if I can get it to focus. I don't know what the stain is. I don't think that has anything to do with moisture damage. I think I spilled something. I think that's from the noodle explosion, actually. Oh, a spider. But yeah, so that's happening. Got some, whoops, good thing that's coming out. And then this is just something that happens with RVs, but the door doesn't really, it's not lined up anymore.
It is.
And so we can't get it latched, but that's fine, that's minor.
These particular spots were underneath the bed, where they really didn't get much airflow and collected a lot of moisture, so they're significantly worse than the rest of the trailer. I didn't get much video of it, but the chipboard behind the carpeting on the walls was pretty moldy and also falling apart.
The window will stay in place during this project, which I'm happy about. That's one thing I think it's not attached, but it's glued in place enough to where we don't have to worry about it falling off. The wall has a seam right here, which means that this section can go without taking out that wiring, and then we can probably get back there and figure out the wiring. A lot of these wires are routed through all that, so we should figure out how we're going to work all this. So all this can come out now, all the plumbing can come out.
For the past 2 years, we've primarily used campground well water in our onboard tank, and as you can see, it has stained our tank orange. We did replace the tank with a much larger, newer tank. Once the carpet came completely off the wall, we were able to see the full extent of the water damage and the mold situation in the chipboard. This is the rear hatch area and vent, as well as the left side tip out. You can see a ton of water damage and mold on the chipboard. So thankfully, we did this project before we got sick.
Forgot to take videos of progress.
Now that we're done ripping stuff out of the trailer, let's talk about what's going in. We decided on cedar plank for the interior walls. Even though it's expensive, cedar is naturally mildew and bug resistant, which are two very important things we considered when choosing a wall panel for full-time RV use. This galvanized roofing is going to be used up front in the kitchen as our backsplash, since wood isn't a great idea since we have a wood stove and it gets very hot. And the rest of this is our foam board insulation and furring strips that will also be used in the rest of the construction.
This portion of the trailer, we're going to be filling in all of these pockets, and this isn't the only insulation we're going to have, because if we were to just butt a wall straight up against this, yes, this would improve our situation, but we'd still be dealing with thermal bridging, which is the biggest issue in these trailers to begin with. So what we're going to do is take this 1-inch Artec foam, and I'm just cutting it out really snug for these pockets. So all of these will take a 15-inch wide piece by however tall, depending on the location. Now, if there's wires going through, I'm just going to cut a small hole or a small slit in it. So I'll do this one really quick. This one is 8.5 inches tall. So I'm going to take my tape measure at the 8.5 inch mark, and I'm going to hold the tape measure there. I'm actually going to use my foot to hold this. I'm going to hold the tape measure there, create a line in the insulation. I'm going to cut the face of it and then snap it. And then I'll cut the face on the back side. And there's our piece. Now, we know in this case we're going to have a wire going roughly in this location. And what we're going to do is we're just going to cut a little groove at roughly the height of our wire, just like that. And I'm going to pull that wire into it. Make sure I get it all the way up in there. There are screws, you may have to push a little harder, but that's our piece for there. We can fill little gaps like this with spray foam, or we can just leave them. In this case, I'm probably just going to leave it because it's not backed up in that corner. Okay. But that's how we're going to do those. We have a big mess in here right now on the floor, but we have insulated all the pockets. Now, this isn't the only insulation we're going to do in this case, but once you get to this point, this is when you have to start breaking your thermal bridging, because every time you get to a spot where the exterior of the trailer is touching the interior, that's going to be a nasty thermal bridge that you don't want. So we've insulated the pockets and taped up any seams that we had. We're trying to minimize the amount we use, so we did use a lot of scraps wherever possible. And then we also taped up the wiring for the trailer lights and stuff under here. You can see we ran out of foil tape in one spot. The front of the trailer hasn't been insulated yet. We are going to insulate that, but we're going to use fiberglass, 3.5 inch fiberglass insulation up there, because we have a wood stove and it is much safer around anything hot. So since we have our wood stove and cooking up there, we're going to be doing fiberglass in the front. Ahead and got 1 can of spray foam and just hit anything that I could hit with the spray foam. In here it's not very much, it's ugly, but it did insulate some of the really small gaps that we just weren't going to get any insulation in. The rest of the trailer is going to get another 1.5 inches of insulation, and we'll move you through the next step of that process. We'll be using furring strips and spacing off the walls in order to break the thermal bridge. We're also going to be using some of these little scraps that we have in between where we mount it to the wall to further reduce the thermal bridging effect. So let's go ahead and move on to that.
Now that the insulation is finally done, it's time to move on to putting the trailer back together. So if you liked this video, please like and subscribe so you can catch the next part when we put it all together and you can see the final results. Anyways, we'll catch you next time.